Hello garden friends. Welcome to the first sunny day we've had in a long time. I wanted to get out here and do a tomato video. It's something I've been thinking about doing for a while, and finally the weather is cooperating. So what I'm going to do in this video is I am going to go plant by plant, variety by variety, show you the tomatoes that I'm growing, show you how they look, how they're producing. Basically talk about everything except taste, because I have one Italian heirloom that is turning orange, but nothing is ready to eat right now. So we're just going to go through so you can see what varieties are doing well this year, what varieties aren't doing well this year, and get some ideas for your garden and what to grow. Now I will say this, it has been an extremely odd weather year. We have gotten so much rain. Farmers are posting on social media that their walkways are flooded. We, as you can see, we don't have any standing water, thank goodness. We're pretty well draining here. But I would encourage you, as you were watching this video and as you were thinking about the tomatoes that you're growing this year at home, if you are in a place where you are having an unusual weather year, then have some grace with your tomatoes. If a tomato didn't do well for you this year, don't automatically refuse to grow it next year, because it might do fantastic for you next year because the weather will be different. Even with taste, right? Because the taste of tomatoes can change with the weather. And so if you grew a tomato this year and you didn't like the taste of it, you might consider trying another plant next year to see if the weather makes a difference. All right, so we're going to start out with the worst first. This is my row of dwarf and determinate tomatoes, and some of them have seen better days, and we will talk about them and show you them and go through it. So basically, all of my tomatoes are labeled. I like to use cut up window shades, and you can see here that this Rosella purple has some foliage that needs to be taken care of. All right, so let's talk about this here. I have tried to get in and take off all of the diseased foliage, but sometimes I just cannot keep up. So this is a Rosella purple dwarf. It is supposed to be very similar in taste to Cherokee purple. So right now we have this huge tomato. It looks like we had some blossoms, but they did not take. Now there's a couple reasons for that. It could be the wet. It also could be we had a early heat wave, and tomatoes do not like temperatures above 90 degrees. So it could have been that during that early heat wave, the blossoms just dried up and fell off. I don't know. So right now, this is what we're dealing with. Now, if you can see right here, we've got some curly bumps on the stem. That's not a disease. It's nothing to be concerned about. Tomatoes, when it's humid like this, they may try to root, and so that's all that's doing. Like I said, nothing to be worried about. Over here we have sweet scarlet dwarf, and we have actually 4 tomatoes right now on this one. Not a lot of foliage because this. And I went through and I tried to take off everything that was showing signs of disease. Now, I don't want to take everything off, obviously, but Sweet Scarlet Dwarf has seen better days. This next one is called Tanunda Red, and you can see this is typical, right? So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to pinch it off. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tomatoes on this one. So Tanunda Red is producing best so far out of the dwarfs. We've got Waratah here. Again, signs of yellowing. I need to get in and remove those leaves, but we only have one tomato. Lots of places where there were blossoms that didn't take, so I'm blaming the weather on this one. Okay, over here, this sad looking thing is a Tasty Lee. There's no tomatoes on the Tasty Lee. Now, Tasty Lee is an F1, it is not an heirloom, but it is supposed to be a hybrid that tastes like an heirloom. And you will see in a few minutes when we get up to the other tomato bed that I have some Tasty Lees that actually look much healthier than this. So I'm wondering if part of the problem isn't the soil in this bed. It's not looking like there's a ton of compost on it. It could be that just nutritionally it's not as good as it could be. All right, this one is also a Tasty Lee, so you can see the difference between this plant and that plant, right? So this Tasty Lee does have a couple of tomatoes on it, and as far as foliage and size, it looks like it's doing a whole lot better. All right, so those are some of the dwarfs. I've got a couple more in this row. This plant right here, I labeled it as a Myona question mark. It's looking as if it is a Myona. These are very similar to the tomatoes that are growing on the other Myona. So I'm thinking it is. Again, you can see lots of yellowing here. This one is a complete mystery. It looks like it wants to be a dwarf of some sort, so probably a Waratah or a Tanunda Red. But when I had my seedling sale, some of them didn't have labels, and so this was one of them. I don't know what it is. Maybe we can figure it out later in the year, but we won't be able to figure it out until we actually start getting tomatoes. And this is the same. This is also a mystery plant. We've got one tomato there, but it does also look to me like it wants to be a dwarf. This poor thing right here. This is Sophie's Choice. Sophie's Choice is looking miserable, but she is trying to put out a tomato. I'm gonna let this tomato ripen and then I'm gonna tear her out because obviously she's not happy. This tomato right here is a mushroom basket. You can see I've had to clear out a lot of foliage on this stem because of disease. We do have a tomato coming, but this is not looking like one of the hardier, best producing tomatoes that I will have grown. Down here, this poor little guy is a Homestead. Now I grew Homestead last year and he did wonderfully. So I am thinking it is not liking all of the wet weather. This is a tomato that loves heat. And other than that heat wave we had, it has not really been a hot summer. It did well for me last year, which is why I grew it this year. It was a favorite in our family taste test, but this year it's not looking too great. These two plants, this one and this one, are both San Marzanos. They came from the same seed packet. I am doing a trial. I have 2 Marzanos, I have 2 Myonas, and I have 2 Amish paste, and so I'm doing a seed trial with Seed Linked. I'm going to be quite honest and say that prior to signing up to this for this seed trial, I had decided I would never grow San Marzanos again because number one, some of them are like this where they just don't thrive. Number two, they're small. And it takes just as much time to process a small San Marzano as it does to process a large Amish paste. And number three, usually, as you can see here, they're very disease prone. So I've had to take a bunch of leaves off of this one. So I had grown them for 3 years, decided I was not growing them again, and then sure enough, I get assigned to the San Marzanos in the seed trial. So I ended up having to grow them again. This plant isn't doing so bad. We've got some tomatoes coming in here. Some signs of yellowing, but not a ton on this plant. That plant is leaving a lot to be desired. These next two are Myona paste, which I had never heard of before, but you can see just by looking at it, it looks healthier. We've got more sets of tomatoes that are coming. All right, we've got these down here. And so San Marzano versus Myona, Myona definitely is doing better at this point. And then these two right here are indeterminates. They're Amish paste. I grew these last year and loved them, and so far my opinions haven't changed. You can see that they're good sized tomatoes, right? They're actually not setting nearly as much as they did last year for me, but they're still setting fruit, showing some signs of disease, but with all this rain, that is to be expected. So we've got right here again the two indeterminate Amish paste, the Myonas, which I think are determinants, and then the San Marzanos. All right, so let's go to the rows of indeterminants now. I tried to plant these alphabetically. It didn't always work, and you will see that in a minute. So this right here is the Abe Lincoln, not doing so hot. It is clearly not thriving. I don't know what the issue is. Everyone talks about how great Abe Lincolns are, and so I was really hoping this would do well so I could try it. Alas, not so much. I think what I might do is cut this sucker off and try to root it and plant it somewhere else to see if I have any luck that way. This one is a carbon, and no tomatoes yet, but the plant itself is doing fine. This is a cardinal. Again, no tomatoes, but the plant itself is doing fine. This right here is a duster. It's doing well. It's got blossoms, but no tomatoes yet. I should mention it is July 20th. We are in zone 6. These guys went in the ground the end of May. So we're at about 60 days since they've been in the ground. This one right here is a Dr. White Cheese, which I grew last year and loved. I've got one tomato on it, some blossoms that look like they dried up, and then some more blossoms that are coming. So high hopes for this Dr. White Cheese. This plant right here is a Ferris wheel, which I also had high hopes for. We've got 2 tomatoes now. I have had to clear out some foliage, but the top growth is looking great. So I'm hoping that this is just coming into its stride. This is a Gilberte paste tomato. You can see here it's got that classic oblong shape to it. Not much to say. It's producing. We've got 4 tomatoes right now. Hoping that it'll put on more so that I can compare it to the other kinds of paste tomatoes. Now these next 2 tomatoes are the same. They're the Italian heirlooms. I grew these on the recommendation of Petra from Fruition Seed, who said that these are a great overall tomato, great for raw eating, for saucing, for, you know, whatever you want to do with them. And so far, they are definitely good size. So we've got 3 here. Again, it doesn't look like those blossoms took, but we'll see. And then over here, this is actually the only tomato in the garden right now that is showing any color. So again, another Italian heirloom this is a good sized tomato. So hoping that those do well. Speaking of good sized tomatoes, this is a Hungarian heart. And I've heard good things about this one, and it is producing very well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tomatoes so far. And I've had to remove some foliage, you can see, but it's holding its own. This one right here is a Garden Treasure, which is a hybrid from Florida. It's also, I think it's released by Proven Winners, but my seeds came from directly from the breeding program. I believe it was the University of Florida. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tomatoes growing, and you can see pretty foliage. Haven't had to do much removing, so that's been good. This tomato right here is an heirloom that I have read that this was the only tomato grown in the country up until about the Civil War. My seeds came from Old Sturbridge Village. You can see signs of disease, right? I have had to remove lots of foliage on this one, but it's definitely producing. And it's going to be similar in shape, I think, to the Costoluto Genovese, where it's that scalloped edges. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tomatoes so far on this plant. So this might be the record as far as fruit set. This little one right here is a mortgage lifter. We have 2 tomatoes, and you can see from this direction not much lower foliage because I've had to do a lot of removing on that one. So we'll see what the mortgage lifter looks like. Okay, in this row, how did I miss this? There's more disease here, so we'll take that off. This is a Nepal. Got 2 tomatoes here. Again, you can see I've had to do some serious removal of foliage, but we've got lots of blossoms coming on. So I'm looking forward to this one. Craig LaHoulier recommends Nepal, and so I can't wait to taste it. This one right here, let me see if this is the, yep. This is a Mountain Fresh Plus. This is the only tomato that I did not grow from seed this year. I wanted to try the Mountain variety. It is a hybrid. I've got 2 tomatoes growing right there. Not too much problem, or not too many problems with yellowing, so that's good. This, I don't know what this is, you guys. It was a sport from the large red tomato from Old Sturbridge Village. I could tell immediately as a seedling that it was not the same as the others because it just had so much foliage. There's one little itty bitty tomato coming, and because there's so much foliage, it is just loaded with yellowing and spots. So I need to come in and clear this out even further. But I'm really interested to see what these tomatoes are like. All right, this wispy one right here is loaded with tomatoes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Not much foliage, right? You can see it's wispy. My tag says this is either a Garden Treasure or a Purple Russian. And now that the tomatoes are coming on, I am pretty sure that this is a Purple Russian because I grew them last year. They were a great tomato. They're also known as Ukrainian purple. So I didn't mean to grow it again this year because I wanted to try some of the others. But I'm glad that it ended up being a mystery and I planted it because I'm going to be glad to have that plant. All right, this was supposed to be a Ferris wheel, but I could tell by the shape of the leaves that it was not. So again, whether it's, you know, a sport, some kind of a genetic freak, I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see what it tastes like. We've got a couple of tomatoes there and there, so 4 tomatoes so far, and blossoms coming. So I don't know what it is, but it is not Ferris wheel. This tomato is a white Tomasol, which Baker Creek gave out for free this year. Every time you place an order with them, you get a free packet of seeds. And I have watched other YouTubers who say that this is a great tomato and it's very productive. And I am finding that to be the case. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tomatoes on it already. More blossoms coming. So I can't wait until these ripen and I can taste them for myself. This tomato right here is triple crop. This was the other winner in our family taste test last year. Now last year I was not impressed with it at all. I think I got 1 or 2 tomatoes off of each plant. It gave up the ghost pretty quickly as far as diseases went, but I planted it again because I wanted to give it a second shot. There are a lot of YouTubers who love this tomato. And as you can see, we've got 1, 2 tomatoes, we've got blossoms coming, so hopefully this will be a better year for triple crop. This one right here is St. Pierre. We've got 2 little tomatoes, we have blossoms. I have had to cut along the bottom stem because of yellowing and disease, but we'll see what happens there. Okay, this is Nebraska Wedding. Now, some people say that this is an indeterminate tomato. Some people say that it's a determinate tomato. So I have been trying not to sucker it, just in case it is really a determinate. I've got 1, 2 tomatoes, 3 tomatoes right there, and that's it so far. But this is a tomato similar to Dr. White Cheese and Kellogg's Breakfast, and so I'm really looking forward to comparing it. I like Dr. White Cheese better than Kellogg's Breakfast, and so we can compare this one to Dr. White Cheese this year and see. I also had to grow this one because my husband is from Nebraska, so it seemed appropriate. This one right here is doing pretty well. This is Rosa de Bern, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So tied for most productive is Rosa de Bern. Again, you can see I've had to remove some foliage on the stem, but that's kind of par for the course. And finally, last but not least, here in this garden, we have Prudence Purple. We have, let me see, 3 tomatoes on it. More blossoms coming. So hopefully if the rain holds off and the sun stays out, these guys will start maturing and we can start tasting pretty soon. Now what I want to do is take you on a walk. If I knew what I was doing, I could stop recording here and start recording when we get to where we're going, but I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to take you on a walk. Hopefully it won't make you too sick. You can get a brief view of the property. It does need mowing. Usually we don't have to mow the end of July and into August all that often because we're not getting rain and the grass is not growing, but obviously that's not the case this year. So what I'm going to show you is my second tomato plot. And last year, this was a happy mistake. I had extra tomato seedlings. I didn't know what to do with them. So I just threw them in the compost. I had a delivery of compost from a local farmer, literally a dump truck full. I couldn't possibly use it all. And so we had a big mountain of compost and I threw the tomato seedlings in there. I put them in the ground, probably a month after the garden tomatoes. And it was such a happy mistake because just as the garden tomatoes were pooping out from disease, the compost tomatoes were coming into their own. So I decided I would do the same thing this year. And so let's stop here for a minute. These poor tomato seedlings were started at the same time that the garden tomatoes were started. These are leftovers from my seed sale. They've just been here on the bench in the shade of a tree since May. So over 2 months. So again, I decided, all right, I've got these extras. I'm going to plant what I can. And so I'll show you what I did with them. When I planted them, they all looked like this. They were scrawny. I had removed the bottom leaves. And I would actually remove even more. So this is what I did. I removed the bottom until they looked like this. And maybe even I would remove this one. Okay? So then what I did was I dug a trench. And so the tomato went in the trench like this. And then I curved the top. Let me see if I can do this with one hand. I curved the top like this. And soil, like everything below my fingers, was in soil. Okay, so the plant looked like this, sticking out of the ground. And then it had all of the stem underneath the compost. So that's how I planted them. And again, it was probably 3 weeks ago. The compost pile got smaller than it was last year. But I took the tomatoes. They looked sickly, just like the ones I just showed you. I planted them in the ground, and this is what they look like now. And just this morning, I went through and I removed the bottom leaves so they wouldn't be touching the compost. But you can see there is absolutely no sign of yellowing or spotting on these leaves. They are very healthy. There's no tomatoes coming on them yet. Like I said, they've only been in the ground for 3 weeks, but some of them are very much flowering. And I wanted to show you the Ferris wheel in the garden is not looking fantastic, but this Ferris wheel absolutely is looking fantastic. Okay, I've got a Nebraska wedding. I've got all kinds of different varieties here. For the most part, they are the same varieties that I showed you in the garden. This right here is a Sophie's Choice. Look how much better that looks than that one that I showed you in the garden that I'm going to pull out. We've got blossoms. This one has been in the garden for 3 weeks. So it just goes to show you never know. So anyway, I will keep you posted on how these guys are doing. I will keep you posted on how the garden ones are doing. And I will even take you along for taste tests this season so that we can see which are worth growing next year and which we may or may not grow again in the future. Happy gardening, everyone. Enjoy those tomatoes. Bye.